Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Split, the young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Brian Cohen, the author of the Ted Saves the World series. That is Robert Scallon, the author of the Dreamer Chronicles, and he is shooting a slingshot.
Yeah, how you doing, Brian?
That is a great... No, it's not a great ending. But see, the trouble is you didn't get to listen to the audio version, in which some of the accents of the book we're reviewing today, Blood Red Road by Maura Young, had some definite kind of, I wouldn't say Southern, but it had some, dialect in there. And so you didn't have the benefit of getting to hear the pretty good performance for that book.
Yeah.
So,
they're sure going to have some of them Wild West critters in that book, though. Wild
West critters and some slingshots and some dust to old towns. This is an interesting book. I enjoyed it, but it's definitely an interesting book. I think that it's epic because a lot of things happen. Mm. A lot of different kinds of stories happen, I would say. And I'm interested to get into it. I didn't really even get to say, hey, Robert, how are you?
Let's just get into it, shall we?
Let's just get into it. I was so busy writing book descriptions that I didn't get a chance to write my quick summary, so I'm going to let Robert take the mic for Blood Red Road.
Yes, thank you very much, Brian. And by the way, this was recommended by Stella, and because of my faux pas with Armour before, where I said she'd recommended something, which she had, and implied that she'd read it and loved it, which she hadn't. Sorry, Armour. I'm going to do the right thing by Stella, because Stella wrote in and said, can you review this, please? But by the way, I haven't read it yet. But I'm really pleased that you did recommend it. Thanks very much, Stella. So yes, here's the summary of Blood Red Road by Maura Young. Have I got to do this in movie trailer voice then, Brian?
It's up to you.
No, I won't. It's going to sound silly. Saba and Lou are twins, but they couldn't be more different. In the parched, dry lands left after the wreckers ruined it, the two 18-year-olds scavenged for scarce food, eking out an existence to support Pa and their 9-year-old sister, Emmy. Pa ain't been too good since Ma died, straining at the skies and muttering about everything, all being in the stars and all. Unlike her slightly older brother, always first, then me behind, says Saba, Saba is prickly and morose, often mean to Emmy. She dotes on Lou, though, and relies on his instinct and kindness to keep them all sane. Until the Tonton arrive and kidnap Lou, proclaiming him to be the one born at midsummer. Pa is killed in the kidnapping and Saba is beside herself, angry and grieving all at once, and she resolves to pursue their attackers and free Lou. First, she must ditch Emmy, who would only be a hindrance, and make her way across the dangerous sand sea. Emmy, of course, has other ideas, and so begins a pacey, twisting, dark tale of revenge. So I was really curious, actually, about the audiobook in this one, Brian, and I really need to comment about that, I think, from a reader-listener's perspective, because if you read the reviews of this book, it saddens me because the writing style, which you wouldn't have seen unless you've actually looked at the text, it's really phonetic. So you got when they say where you've been, it'll be almost where will be fine, but it'll be YER and then BIN, and it's written like that the whole way through, and it's written in, to me, being Australian, I read it as Mad Max. Right, so if you take this whole book as Wild West, Mad Max, and stupid names for things, it works brilliantly. But if you look at the top reviews of the book, a lot of people just hated the writing style, couldn't get on with it, and that really annoyed me because, there's a lot of literary greats. Cormac McCarthy, I mean, my goodness, So they got tripped up on that, which is a shame. So I think you got to go past that. But the audiobook would have circumvented that. So tell me, what was the audio like?
The audio, I mean, it had a lot of there was dialect throughout, and it definitely went all in with it. It definitely, I'm like losing names. Saba,
Yes.
because I just finished another book. So Saba had her dialect throughout the entire book, and it just sounded like natural. And once a few chapters go by, you're totally used to it, and that's the whole rest of the book. And you can hear when people don't have a dialect as well. And there's a lot. I mean, there's a really interesting cast of characters Saba meets along the way.
Oh yeah.
In various locales. And so, yeah, I think that it was handled well. I think that I could see how people would have a little bit of trouble with it, but just like you said, I mean, some of the greatest works of modern literature have that kind of format. And if you're just going to say, oh, well, these 9 other books I read didn't have that, so obviously this is just weird and I can't finish it. I mean, come on, just give it a shot, go through it, because it is a really exciting book. There's a lot of stuff that happens,
Yes.
a lot of twists and turns, and you're missing out on a ride if you don't do if you don't give the dialect a go. But it is, I think, as a writer, it's tough to write dialect,
Yes.
and it will turn people off. I think this just goes to show that even a book that has lots of redeeming qualities, the author did turn some people off by writing it in this way.
And great, excellent summary. Yeah, I figured that to be the case, that if they'd done the audiobook right, there would have been a really nice production of the different accents, and it would give you a real feel for the setting, because the setting's gorgeous, I think. And what you don't know, though, and so what I didn't tell you, is there are no dialogue quotes. So it's hard reading at first. You start reading it. Oh, is that what someone thought? Was that what someone said? Was that some narrative from Saba? So you get all the misspellings. You've got no dialogue quotes, and it's kind of, it's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah. What do you think was the reasoning behind the no dialogue quotes?
It's a very good question. I think it was bold. Could be a mistake. It does give it a flat feel when you read visually, and so to some extent maybe that mirrors the desolation of what's been wrecked. So it's implied that the wreckers were maybe us, that ruined the earth and scorched it or did something. Don't know. I couldn't find any reasoning for it. No one in the reviews mentioned why the author had chosen to do that, but it didn't bother me. It did bother me to start, because I'm a kind of conventional reader. I don't like these things, these tricks. I prefer to have a transparency in my text that just transports me, and anything that stops you being transported is always tricky. I think it's always risky on the author's behalf. So, but so if you're the kind of person who's bothered by that stuff, don't read this book. Get the audio version.
Seriously, the audio. Wouldn't have known that unless you'd brought it up, because it's not any different than any typical audiobook.
Right.
So.
Right. But what did you
want to
give? Go on.
Well, I was going to say, I want to give my thoughts on this one point, and it's this book, and similar to some of the other books we've done, there's kind of multiple books going on in here.
Yes.
We start in kind of a kidnapping sort of thing and a revenge plot, and then all of a sudden we're in a fighting ring. We're in a cage fighting ring, and that really changed the tone for the rest of the book. And we have kind of we kind of go back into the kidnapping, but it's like a little different because Saba has gained some skills, or had them to begin with. That might be something I talk about a little bit later.
Yes.
But it threw me a little. I will admit, it threw me a little. And if I was just straight up reading the book, I would have said to myself, maybe this isn't the book for me, because this was set up in a certain way, and then it changed directions. And eventually I did like it because, I mean, you know me. I like training montages. I like fighting. And so,
Yes.
oh, we're getting more fighting in this book?
Yeah.
Okay, that I can live with.
Yeah.
But it was a turn for me.
Yes.
I felt like it was a sharp turn, and I don't know if all readers would appreciate that as well.
Look, you've said exactly what some of the reviewers said as well. Some of the lower starred reviewers have said the same thing, and also that there's some bits just don't seem to fit, and so we can talk about that later. It didn't bother me. So in the text, I felt that there was this sort of because the inciting incident happens so early on. They're out kind of doing stuff, and you get this sense of the relationship between Saba and Lou, and how snarky Saba is. I mean, you want a snarky heroine. She just can't keep her mouth shut. And yeah, okay, so there's some Insta love in here, and there's some Insta skills happening. But there's some of it is foreshadowed at the start where she is nasty to Emmy. She's not so much whiny, but she's a nasty character, and she kind of knows she is, but she can't control herself. And she feels this white hot rage come over her. And I like the fact that white hot rage turns her into this semi-spoiler. It turns her into a pretty valuable fighter later on in the book, which, as you say, is a surprise turn. And although it's not foreshadowed anywhere, to me, in the setting of this Wild West, where she's kind of galloping across the desert and all of a sudden meets people who seem friendly at first but then aren't. It's the whole kind of stagecoach thing. It's then she gets taken to this lawless town, which is just full of people who them drinking types who like to bet, and it made sense. It was a sudden twist, but it made sense to me because I was transported in the setting already. And I read after about the author that she's been fascinated by westerns, particularly movies, for a long time, particularly the
you can see
style.
that.
You can see that for sure. So she's a John Wayne fan, and who was the director? John
Ford.
Yeah, John Wayne, John Ford fan, and that shines through. So if you like westerns, then I'd say go for it. It's a good story, and that Wild West twist and turns, I liked it. But you're right, it is definitely sudden.
Yeah, and you brought up the term Insta skills.
Yes,
and this is definitely, and this happens in books.
Yeah.
I think, like Shatter Me comes to mind, but we have Insta skills where Saba, and there are spoilers in this section, when Saba does get brought into this town and she is part of a fighting ring, we find out that she is stronger and better than all of the other competitors. And I felt as though she'd almost been portrayed, because she's kind of submissive to her brother earlier in this book, she was kind of portrayed as weak but feisty.
Yes.
And then it turns out she's actually has this power within where she has the red hot anger that cuts her loose, and she's incredible. And that, once I got over that, I thought it was a really cool story element.
Yes.
But I didn't feel as though it was foreshadowed.
No.
In maybe something, and this, I remember this now. This book is pantsed. I've got to say, 100%. There's a 100% possibility that this book was not plotted, that this book was pants.
Yeah.
And maybe let's make it 99%, because there's always a chance I could be wrong. But this is a pantsed book through and through.
Yeah.
And you can tell, I think, by the turns, the twists and turns it takes. And that's not a bad thing, because obviously you liked it. I think I saw on Goodreads it had a 4-star review, which is very good for Goodreads.
Very good, yeah.
and I enjoyed it. I probably would have given it 3 or 4 stars personally.
Yes.
So I liked it, but totally pantsed. And I think it shows that you can. We talk about plotting, but I think you can pants a book, and it can turn out well. So just something to keep in mind.
For those new to the podcast who may not understand a writing term of pantsing, do you want to just give a quick snapshot of what that is?
There are 2 types of writers. Writers who outline a book before they write it so they know generally what happens and how to connect the dots. And pantsers who fly by the seat of their pants and just let the characters do as they will until they get to the end of the book. And this book was definitely not one with elements that come from a typical plotted book, such as foreshadowing, such as just generally things kind of thematically coming together. Those didn't stick out to me, so I think that it was definitely a pantsed book.
Yeah, well, I mean, an editor can always go back in and add the foreshadowing, but I think you're right. It's some of the twists and turns. Think, oh, that came out of nowhere, and sometimes when stuff comes out of nowhere, like it does in a Stephen King book, you think, what if they, what if these guys, these guys are sort of those creative types that just allow any left field stuff to come in, even if it doesn't make sense. Stephen King even appears in some of his own books, for goodness sake. So
yeah,
that's that's an author no-no, and he even admits it himself in the author notes. So yeah, I suppose this is one of those times where maybe those flaws bothered you more than they bothered me, but I would agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you that exists. It reminded me. She reminded me of a kid at school that I went to school with, who was a really good friend, and we played music together and such. And he was kind of nerdy like me, and skinny, but no one ever wanted to get into a fight with him because he wasn't sporty. He was skinny and didn't do any of the rugby or anything. Just didn't, same as me, didn't do any of that. But if you ever annoyed him, you could get to a point of teasing him where all of a sudden the switch would flick and he would turn into a flailing ninja, and not even the guys who boxed in the school would go near him because he was a weapon. Something snapped. And I made the mistake of doing that once and got badly thumped in the face.
Oh no!
He's a really nice guy, But when he snapped, and that's what the feel I got from Saba. So maybe something in my own personal history kind of allowed that to be okay. She's got that in her. That was
that totally makes sense. Well, maybe what I would have liked is her to snap at Emmy in the beginning. Once. Yeah. All I needed was the red hot to come out once, or for the red hot to come out when Lou is being taken. If I had that,
you're right.
Then I would have totally written it off, and it would have been fine.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the reasons why this is a struggle for YA readers, because we've got drug depiction, we've got extreme violence and death. Fatal fights. We've got death right in the early part. Yeah, you've got a heroine who a 14 to sort of 16-year-old girl would probably love to picture themselves as, but it's probably not a book that kind of reader is going to read because of the style, the writing style, the misspellings, etc. It's really it's a young adult book for adults, I reckon. And adults are going to read it and pick up things like you do, which is, but then she gets into this town and all of a sudden she's equipped with these wonderful skills. So I don't know. Like I say, it didn't bother me. So maybe there's something about the escapism of reading a setting like that really fast that just sort of transports you enough. I mean, it's a dystopian setting, but we're never told why the world is as it is.
True.
So yeah. I like the fight scenes. Some of the reviewers didn't. They said, they were kind of, we were just told that she bested her opponent. And yeah, there are those times, but I quite like the descriptions of when her anger took over and she sort of launched and go Saba, kick that guy.
No, I liked the fight scenes. I did like the fight scenes.
Yeah. Well, you're always our determinant of fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did you think about the Insta love though with Jack?
I didn't think it was so bad. There was a little bit of her seeing him, and there was also the whole Hearthstone thing, and so
Yes,
I bought it. I was cool with it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that a little necklace is like, this guy's pretty hot.
Yeah,
essentially,
I know. It's
essentially
a MacGuffin.
that's what. Yeah. So there was a MacGuffin there that made it not insta love for me. It was MacGuffin love, and
Yeah.
that was fine.
Yeah.
I was at that point. I was like, all right, she's a cage fighter. Anything can happen. I'm cool.
Yeah, I should explain MacGuffin since I made you explain Panzer. For those who don't know, it's a Hitchcock term for a device, a thing that's used in the plot that everybody's after. And it might be the villain who's after it for power. It might be the hero who's after it to restore their powers. It might be the government that's after it because it's important to keep their secrets. But it's a thing that drives the plot. And so she has this necklace that's the Hearthstone.
Yeah.
That gets really hot when Jack's around because he's hot.
Exactly.
But I like Jack. He was good. He was a good character.
I liked Jack too. I thought that he added something to the book, and it was really interesting when Jack met some other characters, and I thought that was really good.
We better get into writer's perspective because we're going to run long.
Yeah, we're running a little long. I was just thinking the same thing. You go into it. I'm only going to add a couple writer notes.
Yeah, sure. I think this is not, it's an ambitious style. So a new writer would find it hard to create something like this story, I think, because of the narration style and the voice and with the no dialogue quotes. So it's certainly worth reading from a writer's perspective to understand how somebody more experienced would handle that. And because of that, not all readers are going to get along with it. And the young adult audience, I think, is a little... how can I say? They're not discerning, perhaps. There's a certain thing they want, and if it doesn't fit that, then you might struggle to get the audience that you want. And so I think Maura Young has tried to do that with the romance angle and the heroine gaining the skills and being kind of super powerful, and that works well for me. But along with the writing style, I think, it sort of shoots herself in the foot a bit with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because you were talking about this, like, where does it fit? Is it young adult for adults? Is it too adult for young adults? I don't know, but I'm glad. I mean, they're judging by the number of reviews, people find this book, and I'm glad that people are getting to see it. I think that I don't think an author trying to sell books should necessarily try for something as ambitious as no dialogue quotes and dialect. But I mean, if you really want that to be part of your story, you do have to take risks, because there are plenty of great books out there that did something that we've never seen before.
True.
And as a result, they create kind of a new wave, a new thing that everyone starts doing. I mean, Hunger Games took, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, they all took things to a new place that hadn't been done in that genre before. And as a result, they really changed the game. So be willing to change the game. Yep. Definitely be willing. Yep. Dialect is a tough one, though.
Yeah, that's a fair call. It's a fair call. I think it reads like a book of passion. It does read like an author. This is what an author wanted to write, and you have to admire that. And it's had success. So it's just a shame, I think, that the top 3 kind of most helpful reviews are all pretty critical. And also, I do think there's an issue with traditional publishing in this respect, because I've come across this with previous books we've reviewed and with some that we have in our queue, where you look at it and go, I was so looking forward to this because, insert name of publisher here, Macmillan, Penguin, Random House, pushed it so hard. I was really, and they were champing at the bit. And by the time they got it, they were oversold. And maybe had created some expectations with either book trailers or writing copy or whatever that didn't match the way the book was.
Yeah.
So I do think you've got to be careful when you're going for, and this is the trad pub idea of, you've got the 4-week window, and so they have to put everything at it in that 2-week period leading up to the release. Whereas independent publishers don't have to do that. You can go for soft release. You can get your super fans to come in and, you know, give supportive, sticky reviews. And when I say that, I don't mean engineering. I mean honest reviews. Not reviews that say, I was so looking forward to this because so-and-so pushed it so hard. You don't want that. You want someone who says, I was really keen to read Maura Young's next book, and I was warned that some of the dialogue and dialect might be tricky, but you know what? I loved it. Which would have been what I would have said.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
I'm sounding indignant. I will reread it.
So indignant right now.
I will reread it for the pleasure of the style, for sure. It's a book that stuck with me. I loved the pace of it, and and there's no telling. There's a lot of showing. There is some telling about, some rapid changes of scene, but there's no. You don't. Everything that Saba is, she shows.
Yeah, and that's kind of a nice trait for a character that we. And I think maybe readers would identify or want to identify with someone who has no filter, who has this anger and lets it impact her actions. I think that we all have that as a part of ourselves. So it's nice to be able to see that in a character versus someone who's more whitewashed and edges sanded off. And it's kind of good to see. And I liked Saba. I really did like Saba. And that was one of the reasons, in addition to us having a show where we have to finish the books, that was one of the reasons why I was willing to stick through some dodgy parts, as you might say.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, overall, like I said, 3 or 4 stars. It's worth a read, especially for the fight scenes and fighting in the cage, because that is just cool stuff. And I won't spoil the ending, but I actually like where this book ends, and I think that it would be a really interesting. Book 2. Is there a book 2 out, or is it? I forgot.
You know what? I don't even know. I don't even know. There obviously has to be, because of the way that it ends.
Though there should be, but you never know. I mean,
it is a Dustland series. I'm pretty sure it is already out.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I just don't know the name.
Yeah. Well, I'm ready for some takeaways if you are.
Yeah, do you want me to launch?
Go for it.
Takeaway number 1. I think this is a YA future dystopia with a Wild West frontier feel. I mean, hell yeah, why not?
I agree. Why not? Whatever genre you want to create, make it happen.
Exactly.
I'm going to go back to the Insta Skills thing.
Yep.
A little bit of hinting goes a long way. And we're going to be talking next week about Phoenix Island by John Dixon. And this is the perfect showcase of, we see a character's skills that later come into play.
Yes.
And they feel real, versus something where someone just all of a sudden has powers.
You couldn't be more contrasted. Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. So just keep a little hinting, goes a long way.
That's exactly right. Thank you. My third takeaway is to do with what you've already said, which is about Saba. I think she's a great example of an unlikable heroine. We like her, but she puts her foot in her mouth sometimes, and keeps doing the wrong thing. It's a little bit reminded me of Parkin and the Scorpio Racers, a little bit. That they're very different characters, and I really liked her arc. I liked the fact that she came to regret this way she had of being, and she came to question that, was this right? How she behaved towards her younger sister, and how she always put Lou on a pedestal, and that she couldn't do things and he could. I thought it was really well done. And,
I agree. She did have a good arc.
Yeah. Prompt.
I'm going to let you take this one.
Oh, I get the prompt. And
yeah.
I really like the idea that this was a Wild West band of misfits. So the prompt that I wrote for this one is based on that. You realise, reluctantly, that you must gather a band of misfits together as you discover to your chagrin that you cannot achieve your goal alone, just like Saba. What characteristics must they possess in order for you to be successful? And what is it about these characteristics that presses all your buttons? Look at him pressing those buttons.
I like it. I like it. I pressed buttons. You can't see it on the video, except on the video. But good stuff. Thank you, Robert, for the prompt. You can respond to the prompt at thesplitbookreviews.com, where we now have a functioning comment section. You can also tweet us at thesplitbook and post an iTunes review, and we'll give you a hug, because that's a great thing for people to do.
Yeah, and thanks, Stella, for the excellent recommendation. And if you have now read it, do let us know in the comments.
Yes. Stella, you should read it. I know that I was a little more negative on it, but I think you should read it.
Yeah. So I suppose we should just ride off into the sunset then.
Right off. Next week, Phoenix Island by John Dixon, which I'm really excited to talk about. And thank you for listening to The Split. I'm Brian Cohen. That's Robert Scanlon. We will see you next week for another book review.
See y'all in the dust.
Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to the Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.